So this is my new Trek 920. Just got in yesterday and I put it together. So I'm just going to go a quick overview of the 920, some of my first impressions so far. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments. I'm going to make a more detailed blog post as well, and in the future I may make a follow-up video to this one. So first and foremost, this is a adventure bike, as Trek calls it. It is an all-road bike, so it does great on the road. It's supposed to do great off-road as well, and it's supposed to be designed for adventure touring. So it's not a mountain bike made for touring capable purposes, but it's actually built from the ground up specifically for adventure touring in all sorts of conditions. So this fits me perfectly. I'd like to do a lot more road touring as well as some off-road touring. I'd like to do maybe the Great Divide at some point, and I commute every day. So this is just a jack of all trades bike that I can ride all the time. It's not gonna win any races, but it could compete in anything. I mean, I could take this to a road race and it would be fine. I could probably take it to a mountain bike race and it would be fine as well. So that's the amazing thing about this bike. It's an aluminum frame. I think Trek did this mostly because it lent a lot of flexibility in the way that they could shape this frame, and they can make it a little bit lighter and a little bit better for off-road use as well. So a lot of people like steel, but from riding this bike, I've ridden it 14 miles so far since yesterday, and it's most definitely the smoothest bike I've ever ridden. I've had a lot of carbon bikes, and I've had a lot of steel, or not a lot of steel bikes, but I've had several good steel bikes, and this is by far the smoothest bike that I've ridden. So just real quick, we've got hydraulic disc brakes here, TRP Hilux. They're still bedding in. I can't really comment on them. They're super powerful, but I have a feeling they're going to get quite a bit better as we go along. They look super cool, and the ergonomics are fantastic. Keep in mind that the hoods are very long because the master cylinder is housed here. So I like the stem that's on there, but it is a little bit long for me. We'll see. I mean, it may not be much of an issue. It comes with racks front and rear. On this 58, it comes in the box with the racks off. So if you order one of these and you don't want to have the racks on, just let the shop know to not put them on. They may put them on the smaller sizes from the factory, but with mine they both came off of the bike and I had to install them. So they're mounted up pretty easy. There's just a long bolt that goes through the steer there, and then it bolts up on a couple places on the fork. So, and that brings us, of course, to the through axles. That's a little bit of a controversial thing. You can't really just pick those up anywhere, but they're a whole lot stronger. With disc brakes, I feel like they're a must, especially on a fork like this. It's going to really protect the fork and keep it from twisting under braking pressures and that sort of thing. And, you take the wheel out, you put it back in, it's going to be in exactly the same place, so you're not going to have any brake rubbing like you do on a lot of quick release systems. And I have definitely had my fair share of experiences with that. The bike comes with Duster Elite wheel set, and that's a tubeless ready wheel. There's been a whole lot of comments on the fact that this is a 28 spoke wheel and that you shouldn't have that on a touring bike. But keep in mind, a wheel's strength is not solely determined by its spoke count. So these have an offset spoke bead, so they're not dished nearly as much as many other wheels. And then, of course, this is a wider rim. I think it's 23 millimeter inner width. So the rim itself is already a little bit stronger, and I'm sure that that makes up for it. It's not going to be as strong as some of your beefiest touring wheels, but I think it's going to be right in there, and it should do fine. These are tubeless ready, of course, but I have this one set up tubeless. We had a issue with the front tire that came, and so I put the stock tire back on, which is not a tubeless ready tire. It's a steel beaded tire, but otherwise it's a pretty good tire. 29 by 2 inches, or 700 by 51. And if you want to go tubeless, you just need one of their plastic rim strips, and of course a tire that's designed to go tubeless. There's ghetto options, but I don't really recommend that too much. These are super easy to set up and held air without sealant, no problem. So We've got bar end shifters. I was a little bit worried about this simply because I haven't used them, but I was also excited because that's, it's more reliable and, it's cheaper to fix if something should go wrong. I was a little bit surprised to find out that these are super nice shifters. These are probably the nicest shifters I've ever used, on my own bikes anyways. I've seen some others, but that's definitely a premium shifter. It makes switching back and forth not a problem at all, and of course it's more reliable. So it's indexed on the rear derailleur, and then on the front it is simply a friction shifter, which is a great thing. It's much easier to use on a front derailleur with the friction mode. So on this bike, this is one of my favorite parts. On the 56 and up, this is a 58, you get 4 water bottle cage mounts on the main triangle. So you have one up here, one down there, another on the seat tube, and then one underneath the down tube. The smaller sizes just get these 2 and then the one underneath the down tube. Basically what they've done is they've moved this seat tube bottle cage up a little bit, and then the main bottle cage on the down tube they've moved down, which makes room for that one up top where I've got a water bottle cage and then my Crank Brothers pump there. So the racks I found to be extremely sturdy. I really like the fact a lot of the rack I had before, an Axiom rack, great rack, but you have to, the bag ends up sitting up here on this top rail, and this rack comes with the lower rail, so you can mount the bags a little bit further down, helps with stability, and then you have a little bit more room up top for other stuff. So it comes with a reflector on the rear. Of course, it also came with reflectors on the wheels, and it had a dork disc and everything, but I took those off immediately, of course. It comes with a blender stem, which Trek has been marketing for a few years. There's essentially, if you can see, there is space behind that handlebar, and there's a mount that you can fit inside, and then it'll stick up right about there, and you can mount different Bontrager accessories like some of their Bontrager lights and such. So Bontrager lights have a really good reputation. I'm thinking about getting some, and they mount there pretty seamlessly. The saddle, I know a lot of people ask about the saddle. A lot of people will probably switch the saddle. That's, of course, a personal thing, I think. And for me, I get along with a lot of saddles. This one I actually like quite a lot. It's a little bit hard. When you first get on it, you think, man, that's a hard seat. But it's hard right here. And then you kind of get, I think that'll wear in a little bit. But it keeps you off of this area. So there's less pressure here. And I found it to be really comfortable for a lot of reasons. It has a SRAM 2x crank. This is a 42 by, let me see, I think a 36. I think it's a 36 inner chainring. I'll have to check that. So that 2x system is awesome on a touring bike. A lot of people do 1xs on mountain bikes, and I'm definitely one of those people. But on a touring bike on the road, you're going to be going from high speeds to really slow climbing speeds. And so the 2x is great. And I've found that you can use just about every one of these rear gears without switching up front. I know that's really bad for chain line, but when you're going around town, you're usually hanging out in the middle. Every now and again you jump to one of those bigger cogs back there, and it doesn't really make sense to switch chain rings for that brief moment. So that's an awesome convenience there. It has a threaded external bottom bracket. A lot of Trek's mountain bikes have press fits, and they're fine, but on a bike that you want to be absolutely reliable and take you to all sorts of interesting places, a press fit is just quite an inconvenience and could be a liability. So I'm really glad they put on that external threaded bottom bracket. A lot of touring bikes will come with a square taper, and yeah, you can get those anywhere, but they do break all the time. And I found that the external bottom brackets, the threaded ones anyways, are just super hassle-free, and when you do change them, they're the easiest ones to change. It's simple, unthread it, thread a new one on, and that's it. So it has a SRAM X5 front derailleur and a SRAM X7 Type 2 rear derailleur. So it has a clutch. You can't just push that forward like you would on a normal one. You push hard enough, it will come forward. And then there's a button here that will lock it all the way forward so that you can remove the rear wheel, no problem. These are some really cool features I haven't had on a bike before that I've seen on other bikes. So I'm definitely happy to be part of the club with one of these derailers. And of course it's mounted, in a standard way. So if something did happen to it, you could throw in another 10-speed or a derailleur, which you can get anywhere now, and it's going to be no problem. This is, of course, 36 by 11 on the rear, 10-speed. A lot of people say, oh, I don't like 10-speed. As far as reliability is concerned, I've never had an issue with 10-speed. I've run it for a long time on a lot of different bikes over many years, and there's never been a reliability issue. A lot of people talk about, well, the chain's narrower than 9-speed. No, it's all theoretically weaker, but in practice, this is a very robust system, and it shifts super smooth. And these days, especially if you're traveling in developed parts of the world, the U.S., Europe, Canada, you're going to be able to find these drivetrains at pretty much any bike shop. They're going to be carrying a lot of 10-speed stuff. This is probably what they're carrying the most, to be honest. And so you can get the other stuff. 9-speed is still very common, but as you get into 7 and 6-speed, it's really hard to get a hold of. So for me, this is the most reliable, straightforward way to go as far as the drivetrain is concerned, and I'm totally satisfied with that. So the bike is olive drab, and it's a real olive drab. If you look closely at it, it is very much kind of an army green. It's a flat, it's a matte finish, I should say. It comes off looking a little bit G.I. Joe-ish, or Call of Duty almost from if you stand back from it. But I think Trek was going for more of a forest theme. The striping here indicates a little bit more of that, as well as the tree up here on the top tube. And so for me, I really like the way that this bike looks. It's understated. It's not real flashy, but it's a premium bike that's going to do pretty much anything I want it to do for touring and commuting purposes. So if you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. I'm going to write a more detailed blog post that will go over some of the other aspects, and I'll probably do a follow-up video at some point. So catch you later.